What is up, my besties? Welcome back to Main Character Classics, the only channel that actually reads the syllabus so you don't have to. Today, we are diving into a total disaster of a situation. We're starting with Frankenstein *, but before we get to the actual monster, we have to talk about the opening letters because the vibes are already completely off. Enter our first POV character, Robert Walton. Now, Robert is giving major, I'm the protagonist of a movie no one asked for energy. He's currently in St. Petersburg, Russia, and he's writing a letter to his sister, Margaret. Right off the bat, he's like, "Hey sis, I know you thought I was going to flop this entire mission, but look at me. I'm here, I'm thriving. I am actually deceased at the confidence." Like, he arrives in Russia and immediately starts romanticizing a cold northern breeze hitting his cheeks. He's literally acting like the wind is a sign from the universe that he's destined for greatness. He's not just going to the North Pole. He's convinced it's this magical, glowing paradise where the sun never sets and there's no ice. Bestie, it is the Arctic. It is literally just ice and sadness. Can we just talk about the sheer delusion here? He really thinks he's going to find a tropical vacation spot at the North Pole. The level of trust me bro energy is actually astronomical. So, Robert starts listing his goals, and this is where the audacity really peaks. He wants to discover the wondrous power that makes compasses work. Basically, he wants to solve magnetism and find a new trade route to the Pacific. He thinks he's about to save all of humanity and be the biggest legend to ever exist. He compares the joy of this dangerous, life-threatening voyage to a little kid playing in a boat on a holiday. I cannot with him. Imagine telling your sister, I might die, but it's giving childhood summer camp vibes. He is absolutely orbiting a different planet right now. But then, we get a little lore drop. Robert reveals that this has been his favorite dream since he was a kid. He spent all his time in his Uncle Thomas's library, reading about explorers. He mentions his education was neglected, which is just code for, I didn't go to school because I was too busy obsessing over maps in my pajamas. Also, shout out to his dad, who literally gave a deathbed order forbidding Robert from ever becoming a sailor. The dying wish. The drama is already peaking and we're only one letter in. Like the father really said, do not go on a boat, and Robert responded with bet. Now, it gets even messier. Robert tells us that he actually had a poet era. Yes, he tried to be the next Shakespeare or Homer, but he completely flopped. He spent a year living in his own little fantasy world before realizing he had zero talent. He says he bore the disappointment heavily, which is just him saying he spent a year crying in his room because he wasn't a literary icon. Imagine the ego crash of thinking you're the next great poet and then realizing you're just I am screaming. The second-hand embarrassment is searing. But wait, plot twist. He inherits a bunch of money from a cousin. Suddenly he's got the bag and he decides to go back to his original obsession, the sea. He spends 6 years in a total grind set phase. He doesn't just buy a boat. He voluntarily subjects himself to famine, thirst, and zero sleep. He hires himself out as a mate on whaling ships just to prove he can handle the struggle. He even brags that his captain offered him a promotion because he was so valuable. The way he's romanticizing starvation and sleep deprivation is actually a red flag. This isn't a grind set. This is a manic episode. He's literally paying to suffer just so he can feel like a main character. And then he hits us with the ultimate narcissism. He asks his sister, do I not deserve to accomplish some great purpose? He's basically saying that because he suffered a bit and has a trust fund, the universe owes him a legendary discovery. He claims he chose glory over luxury, while literally using his inherited wealth to fund the whole trip. The hypocrisy, the sheer lack of self-awareness. He's really out here acting like he's a martyr for science while wearing a designer fur coat. I'm actually shaking. To wrap up the letter, he talks about how much he loves the Russian sledges, which he says are way better than English coaches, and mentions he's wearing furs so his blood doesn't literally freeze in his veins. He's heading to a place called Archangel in a few weeks to hire a ship and a crew, and he plans to sail in June. Then he drops the most casual bomb. He tells Margaret that if he fails, she'll see him again soon. Or never. Bestie is literally betting his entire life on a vibe. He's treating a suicide mission like a gap year trip to Europe. I am actually terrified for everyone involved in this expedition. He ends the letter with some sweet words for Margaret, but we know the truth. Robert Walton is a delusional man with a god complex and a lot of cousin money, and he is heading straight into a disaster. And Bestie, We haven't even gotten to the part where asterisk gasp asterisk okay, besties, welcome back to Main Character Classics. Today we are diving back into the letters of Robert Walton, and let me tell you, the vibes are absolutely rancid. No, because he is literally an archangel, Russia, and he is asterisk struggling asterisk. He's surrounded by frost and snow, basically living in a giant freezer, and he's writing to his sister, Margaret, just to let her know that he's officially entered his expedition era. He's hired a boat and gathered some sailors who apparently have dauntless courage, which is just fancy talk for these men are actually insane for agreeing to go to the North Pole with me. But then Robert starts spiraling, like actually spiraling. He tells Margaret that he has this one want that is literally ruining his life. He has no bestie. He's out here trying to discover the secrets of the universe, but he has zero one-on-one time with a peer. He's basically saying, if I slay, I have no one to hype me up, and if I flop, I have no one to hold my hand. He wants a man who is gentle yet courageous and cultivated, which is just a long way of saying he wants a curated, high-spec sidekick to validate his main character energy. I am actually deceased. Imagine being this rich and successful and still being like, but who will look into my eyes and understand my intellectual depth? Bestie, get a hobby or a therapist, please. This is giving major, I'm the only smart person in the room energy, and it is a total Ike. Then, and this is where it gets truly messy, Robert starts admitting that he's actually kind of a fraud. He reveals that he's self-educated, which sounds slay on paper, but then he admits that for the first 14 years of his life, he basically just read his Uncle Thomas's travel books and ran wild. Now he's 28, and he literally tells his sister that he's more illiterate than a 15-year-old schoolboy because he didn't learn other languages. He knows his daydreams are magnificent, but they lack keeping, which is basically him admitting he's totally delulu and needs someone to tell him when his ideas are actually trash. Not me laughing, a grown man admitting he's basically a teenager in a fancy coat. Like, imagine being 28 and realizing you skipped the basics of school because you were too busy dreaming about icebergs. The audacity to call himself ardent when he's actually just unmanaged. But wait, he tries to pivot to the crew to make himself look better. He mentions his lieutenant, who is a total grindset guy, super brave, obsessed with glory, and just wants to climb the corporate ladder of the Navy. Then we get to the captain. Robert is obsessed with this man because the captain is gentle and doesn't believe in the usual brutality of ship life. Robert is basically like, I was raised by a feminine influence, so I can't handle toxic masculinity on my boat. And then, besties, the captain drops the most insane lore of all time. Robert tells us that the captain once loved a Russian girl. He had all this prize money and a farm, and the father agreed to the marriage. But right before the wedding, the girl throws herself at his feet, sobbing, and tells him she actually loves some other guy who is totally broke. And instead of going full villain mode, the captain just lets her go. No, it gets crazier. He gives the other guy the farm and the rest of his money so they can be happy. Then he literally begs the father to let them marry. Him actually screaming. Who does that? Who gives away their entire estate to the man who stole their girlfriend? That is not noble. That is a complete lack of self-preservation. I would be in the trenches. I would be filing a lawsuit. The captain really said, take my house and my money, and then just sailed away. I cannot. Anyway, Robert thinks this makes the captain a noble fellow, even though he also mentions the captain is uneducated and silent as a Turk, which is just Robert being a low-key shade thrower. He's basically saying, he's a saint, but he's kind of boring and doesn't know how to read. Despite all the drama, Robert is still locked in. He tells Margaret that his resolutions are fixed as fate. He's waiting for the weather to clear so he can sail into the land of mist and snow. He's feeling this trembling sensation, half scared and half hyped, and he mentions the Ancient Mariner poem, claiming there's something in his soul that pushes him away from common pathways. He's basically admitting he has a death wish for the sake of the aesthetic.
Bombastic side-eye. Criminal offensive side-eye. Do you understand?
He's literally romanticizing a suicide mission. He's like, I won't kill an albatross, so don't worry. But bestie, you are going to the North Pole in a wooden boat. The red flags are flying so high they're basically kites. He ends the letter by asking Margaret to keep writing because he might need her to support his spirits, and he tells her to remember him with affection if he disappears forever. Like, hello, just say you're scared. Why are we acting like this is a poetic sacrifice when you're just obsessed with the marvelous? And bestie, we haven't even gotten to the part where